He didn't know he was debating John Lennon. Reporter tried to outsmart a clueless pop star. New York City, December 1970. The air in the small, cramped press conference room was thick with anticipation and a barely concealed hostility. John Lennon sat at a table, Yoko Ono by his side, facing a phalanx of journalists. He was promoting his raw, confessional album, Plastic Ono Band, an unflinching look at his pain and disillusionment. But the journalists weren't interested in his music. Not really. They were interested in the spectacle, in the controversy, in the man who had dared to say the Beatles were over and who now, with Yoko, was challenging every convention of rock stardom. Among them sat a young, ambitious reporter from a prestigious East Coast newspaper, Mark Thorne. Thorne was a product of Ivy League education, with a sharp intellect and a firm believer in the power of the written word to expose what he perceived as fraud. He saw John Lennon not as an artist, but as a charlatan, a pop star masquerading as a philosopher, a clueless musician spouting simplistic slogans about peace and love. Thorne's mission: to expose Lennon's intellectual shallowness, to corner him with complex questions, to reveal the lack of substance behind the celebrity. The press conference began with the usual mundane questions about the album. John answered with a weary honesty, his voice gravelly, his eyes intense. Then, Mark Thorne raised his hand. "Mr. Lennon," Thorne began, his voice dripping with condescension, "your recent work, particularly your pronouncements on peace and societal change, seems to lack a coherent philosophical framework. Do you truly believe that simplistic slogans like 'Give peace a chance' offer any genuine solution to complex geopolitical issues, or are they merely facile attempts to maintain relevance?" The room went silent. Other journalists exchanged nervous glances. Thorne had thrown down the gauntlet. John Lennon, the man who had once dismissed his own lyrics as gobbledygook, looked at Mark Thorne. A flicker of something dangerous ignited in his eyes. What happened next would become a legendary yet largely unrecorded debate. A clash of intellects, a battle of worldviews, and a reporter who thought he was about to outsmart a clueless pop star was about to learn a very painful lesson. Mark Thorne had spent weeks preparing for this moment. He'd devoured philosophical texts, studied geopolitical theories, and meticulously crafted his questions. He saw himself as a champion of intellectual rigor, ready to dismantle the flimsy arguments of a pop culture icon. He expected John to stammer, to deflect, to resort to platitudes, but John Lennon was not the man Thorne imagined. "A coherent philosophical framework, you say?" John repeated, a slow, dangerous smile spreading across his face. "You mean like the ones that led us into Vietnam, or the ones that justify poverty and oppression around the world?" Thorne bristled. "Mr. Lennon, I'm referring to established schools of thought, not political outcomes. Your approach seems to be an emotional appeal rather than a reasoned argument." "And what's wrong with emotion, mate?" John shot back, leaning forward. "Is that not where all art comes from? All real change? As you think people marched for civil rights because of a philosophical treatise? They marched because they felt something, because they were hurt, because they wanted justice." Yoko, sensing the shift in energy, placed a calming hand on John's arm. But John was just getting warmed up. "You talk about complex geopolitical issues," John continued, his voice rising. "But what's more complex than a child starving or a mother losing her son in a war? Your coherent philosophical frameworks often ignore the human cost. My simplistic slogans are just trying to remind people of that cost." Thorne, initially confident, felt a tremor of unease. This wasn't the clueless pop star he'd anticipated. This was a man with a fierce, street-level intelligence, honed by years of observation and raw experience. But surely, Mr. Lennon, Thorne pressed, and trying to regain control, you don't believe that merely wishing for peace will achieve it. There are practical realities, power dynamics, economic forces at play. Of course there are, John conceded, his tone surprisingly calm now. But those forces are made up of people, and people can change their minds. They can change their hearts. And sometimes a simple song, a simple idea, can plant a seed that grows into something bigger than all your complex geopolitical issues combined. The room was captivated. This wasn't an interview, it was a debate, a clash between the academic and the artist, between theory and raw human experience. And Mark Thorne, the intellectual giant, was finding himself on surprisingly shaky ground. Hey, before we continue with this incredible story, I need to give you an important warning. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube has removed their subscriptions without notice. Just take a quick look at the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I don't want you to miss any of the exclusive content that's coming up. And while you're there, leave that powerful like that helps me a lot with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who is part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's interact. The debate raged for nearly 20 minutes. John, fueled by a lifetime of questioning authority and a deep-seated empathy, dismantled Thorne's academic arguments with a surprising blend of wit, passion, and brutal honesty. He spoke of the hypocrisy of governments, the futility of war, but the power of individual action. He didn't quote philosophers, he quoted life. Thorne, increasingly flustered, realized his carefully constructed intellectual trap was failing. John wasn't playing by his rules. In a desperate attempt to regain the upper hand, Thorne decided to pivot, to expose what he believed was Lennon's ultimate vulnerability, his own past. "Mr. Lennon," Thorne interjected, his voice sharper now, "you speak of peace and love, yet your own history is fraught with conflict. The breakup of the Beatles, your public disputes with former bandmates, even your personal life has been marked by turmoil. How can you preach unity when you yourself have struggled to maintain harmony in your closest relationships?" It was a low blow, a personal attack. The room collectively gasped. Yoko tensed beside John. The other journalists braced themselves for an explosion. But John didn't explode. He looked at Thorne, not with anger, but with a profound sadness. "You're right," John said, his voice quiet now, stripped of all bravado. "You're absolutely right. I'm a mess. I've made mistakes. I've hurt people I loved. I've been angry, selfish, confused." Thorne looked stunned. This wasn't the reaction he expected. "But that's precisely why I sing about peace," John continued, his gaze unwavering. "Because I know how hard it is. Because I know the pain of conflict. Because I know what it feels like to be lost and broken." He paused, taking a deep breath. "It's easy to preach peace when you've never known war. It's easy to talk about love when you've never known hate. But I've known both, and I choose peace. I choose love. Not because it's easy, but because it's the only way out of the mess I've made, and the mess we've all made." The room was silent. Thorne, who had sought to expose a fraud, had instead witnessed a raw, vulnerable confession. And in that moment, John Lennon wasn't a pop star. He was just a man. A flawed, struggling, deeply human man. A man who, despite his own imperfections, still dared to believe in a better world. Thorne had no response. His carefully crafted questions, his intellectual superiority, his entire premise had crumbled in the face of John's raw honesty. He had expected denial, deflection, anger. He had received vulnerability, self-awareness, a confession that disarmed him completely. The other journalists, initially eager for a scandal, now sat in stunned silence. They had come for a show, but they had witnessed something far more profound, a moment of genuine human connection. John, having laid bare his own imperfections, looked at Thorne with a gaze that was both challenging and empathetic. "You see, mate," John said, his voice gentle now, "the difference between you and me is that you think you need to be perfect to talk about peace. I think you need to be human, flawed, broken even, because that's where the real work begins." He gestured around the room. "We're all trying to figure it out, all of us, and if someone like me, who's made every mistake in the book, can still believe in peace, then maybe there's hope for everyone." Thorne, a man who prided himself on his ability to articulate, found himself speechless. He had come to expose a clueless pop star, but he was the one who felt exposed. His intellectual armor had been pierced by a simple, heartfelt truth. The press conference continued, but the energy had shifted. The questions became softer, more respectful. The journalists, for a brief moment, seemed to see John Lennon not as a celebrity, but as a fellow human being grappling with the same complexities of life. Mark Thorne, however, remained silent for the rest of the conference. He scribbled notes, but his usual confident posture had slumped. The debate he had sought to win had instead won something from him. It had stripped away his cynicism. It had challenged his assumptions. It had forced him to confront the uncomfortable truth that sometimes the most profound wisdom doesn't come from textbooks or philosophical treatises. It comes from the raw, messy, imperfect heart of a man who dares to sing about peace, even when his own life is in turmoil. Dear Mark Thorne returned to his office, the echoes of John Lennon's words rattling in his mind. He sat at his typewriter, staring at the blank page. His article, meant to be a scathing exposé, felt hollow, dishonest. He tried to write the piece he had planned, the one that painted Lennon as a simplistic, hypocritical pop star, but the words wouldn't come. They felt false. He remembered John's raw confession, his vulnerability, his unwavering belief in peace, despite his own struggles. Thorne realized that he had fundamentally misunderstood John Lennon. He had judged him by academic standards, when Lennon operated on a different plane entirely, a plane of emotion, intuition, and lived experience. He couldn't write the hit piece. His journalistic integrity, which he held so dear, wouldn't allow it. Instead, he wrote a different article, not a reflective piece about the nature of celebrity, the power of vulnerability, and the unexpected wisdom found in unconventional places. He wrote about the courage it took to admit one's flaws and still advocate for a better world. He wrote about how John Lennon, the clueless pop star, had actually outsmarted him, not with intellect, but with humanity. He submitted the article to his editor, bracing himself for rejection. And rejection came swiftly. "This isn't the story we wanted, Thorne," his editor said, tossing the manuscript back at him. "We wanted a takedown. We wanted to expose Lennon, not to humanize him." "But this is the truth," Thorne argued. "This is what actually happened." "The truth we want," the editor retorted, "is that John Lennon is a hypocrite. This piece makes him sound like a saint, and it's unpublishable." Thorne was devastated. His career, which he had meticulously built on intellectual prowess, was now at a crossroads. He could either compromise his newfound understanding or stand by the truth he had witnessed. He chose the truth. He refused to rewrite the article. He refused to twist John Lennon's words. The article was never published. It sat in a drawer, a testament to a journalist's integrity and a pop star's unexpected depth. Mark Thorne eventually left that newspaper, disillusioned by the selective nature of truth in media. He went on to pursue a different path, one that allowed him to explore the complexities of human experience with more nuance and less cynicism. And John Lennon, unaware of the internal battle he had sparked, continued to sing about peace, his voice echoing across the world, a testament to the power of a simple message delivered with profound honesty. Years passed. John Lennon continued his journey, his music evolving, his activism unwavering. Mark Thorne pursued his new career, a quiet academic, far from the glare of the press. They never met again. John never knew the impact he had on Thorne that day. Thorne never sought credit for his unpublished truth, but the ripple effect of that debate, though unseen, was profound. Thorne's experience that day changed his approach to his work, to his students, to his understanding of the world. He taught them to look beyond the surface, to question assumptions, to seek the humanity in every story. He often told his students about a certain pop star who had taught him that true wisdom wasn't found in intellectual superiority, but in empathy and vulnerability. He never named John Lennon, but the lesson was clear. Meanwhile, John Lennon, in his own way, continued to embody the very principles he had articulated that day. He embraced his imperfections, used his platform for change, and never stopped believing in the power of a simple message. The Plastic Ono Band album, initially met with mixed reviews by critics who struggled with its raw honesty, eventually became recognized as a masterpiece. Its unvarnished look at pain, abandonment, and the search for self resonated with millions. The simplistic slogans Thorne had scoffed at, "Give peace a chance," "Imagine," became global anthems sung by generations, proving that sometimes the most profound ideas are indeed the simplest. The debate in that small press conference room, though largely forgotten by the public, was a microcosm of a larger cultural shift, a shift from rigid intellectualism to a more holistic understanding of truth, from cynicism to a renewed belief in the power of human connection. John Lennon, the clueless pop star, had not only held his own against a seasoned intellectual, but he had also, unknowingly, changed a man's life. He had shown him that the greatest debates aren't won with logic alone. They are won with heart. John Lennon was murdered in 1980. The world mourned the loss of a voice that had dared to imagine a better world. Mark Thorne, now a respected professor, heard the news with a profound sense of loss. He pulled out the unpublished article from his drawer, reading it again, the words still resonating with the truth he had witnessed. He never published it, but he shared its essence with his students, year after year. Sometimes he would tell them, "The most important stories are the ones that never make it to print, the ones that change you, even if they don't change the world." The story of the debate between John Lennon and Mark Thorne is not found in official biographies or historical records. It's a whisper, a hidden truth, but it speaks volumes about the man John Lennon truly was. Not just a pop star, not just an activist, but a deeply intelligent, profoundly empathetic human being who could disarm even the most cynical intellectual with the sheer force of his honesty. He didn't know he was debating John Lennon. He thought he was debating a clueless pop star. But John Lennon, with his raw vulnerability and unwavering belief in humanity, proved to be the most formidable opponent of all. He didn't win with logic. He won with truth. And in doing so, he left an unseen ripple of change that touched a single life, and through that life, countless others. The unpublished article, a testament to a journalist's integrity, likely still exists somewhere. A forgotten piece of history. But the debate itself lives on, not in words, but in the echoes of a lesson learned. That true wisdom isn't about being smart. It's about being human. The end. If this story about intellectual humility, the power of vulnerability, and the unexpected wisdom found in human connection moved you, subscribe and hit that like button. Share this with someone who needs to hear that sometimes the most profound lessons come from the most unexpected teachers. What moment taught you to look beyond the surface and see the deeper truth in someone? Tell us in the comments below.